San Francisco, 2:30 p.m. Emma and Daniel Harper had been trying for years to have a child when the adoption agency called about a 3-year-old girl named Sophie. They thought it was a miracle. She was quiet, fragile, and deeply sad. She lost her parents. The agency director explained, "She just needs a loving home." Emma and Daniel didn't hesitate. They signed the papers that day and unknowingly invited something monstrous into their home. For the first few days, Sophie was silent. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't smile, just watched them. One night, Emma made her a chocolate cake. Sophie stared at it, then picked it up and started licking the frosting off the table. Emma laughed nervously. "Sophie, sweetie, you don't have to do that." Then Emma's stomach turned. There were worms crawling out of the cake, and Sophie was eating them. A week later, Daniel found Sophie outside, sitting on the swing, humming softly. As he got closer, his blood ran cold. Her mouth and hands were covered in blood. A small rabbit lay beside her, ripped apart. Daniel swallowed hard. "Sophie, where did you get this?" She tilted her head. "Mommy gave it to me." Daniel's stomach tightened. Emma had been inside the whole time. That night, Emma was cleaning the kitchen when she heard, "Sophie, it's time for bed." She smiled. Daniel was putting her to sleep. Then a small hand tugged at her shirt. Emma turned. Sophie stood there confused. "Mommy? Who are you talking to?" Emma's heart stopped because upstairs, Daniel was still talking to someone in Sophie's room. The next morning, Daniel was picking up Sophie's crayons when he noticed a drawing. A woman with hollow black eyes standing over a crib. Her hands were red. "Did you draw this?" Daniel asked. Sophie nodded. "Who is it?" She grinned. "Mommy." Emma called the adoption agency in a panic. "We need to know about Sophie's parents." There was a long silence. Then the director whispered, "Sophie's mother died in childbirth. There was never a father. The child shouldn't have lived." Emma's stomach dropped. That night, the house filled with whispers, a cold breath on Emma's neck, a laugh echoing in the darkness. And in the doorway, Sophie stood there, her black eyes staring. "You were never my real mommy." The lights flickered, and Emma finally understood. They hadn't adopted Sophie, she had chosen them. My name is Hannah, and this story happened when I was 12 years old. My mom loved antiques and often dragged me along to thrift stores. One Saturday, she spotted it, a porcelain doll in a glass case. It had pale skin, rosy cheeks, and long black hair, styled into perfect ringlets. Its eyes were a piercing blue, almost too lifelike. "Isn't it beautiful?" my mom said, already reaching for her wallet. The shopkeeper hesitated. "That doll has a reputation," he said. "People say it's cursed." My mom laughed it off. "It's just a doll." We took it home. Mom placed the doll on a shelf in the living room, its glassy eyes staring out into the room. That night, as I was falling asleep, I heard faint footsteps in the hallway. I thought it was my mom, but when I called out, there was no answer. The next morning, I noticed the doll's position had changed slightly, its head tilted to the side, as if it had been watching me. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. Objects in the house moved on their own. Doors creaked open in the middle of the night, and I often felt like I was being watched. One morning, I found the doll sitting on the coffee table, even though no one had touched it. "Mom, did you move the doll?" I asked. She shook her head. "You must have done it and forgot." But I knew I hadn't. That night I woke up to the sound of faint whispering. It was soft and indistinct, like someone murmuring just outside my door. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but the doll was sitting on the floor, staring up at me. I screamed, waking my mom. "How did it get here?" she asked, picking it up and putting it back on the shelf. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, we found a message scrawled on the mirror in the living room. "Play with me." It was written in what looked like red crayon, though I knew we didn't have any crayons in the house. My mom blamed me, but I swore I hadn't done it. When we looked at the doll, its hands were smudged with red. I begged my mom to get rid of the doll, but she refused, saying it was just my imagination. That night, I woke up to the sound of soft humming. When I turned on the light, the doll was sitting on the edge of my bed, its head tilted, and its glassy eyes locked on mine. I screamed and threw it across the room, but when I looked back, it was already back on the bed. The next day, I did some research and found a story about the doll. It had belonged to a girl in the 1920s who had died under mysterious circumstances. Her parents claimed the doll was possessed, and after her death, every family who owned it experienced tragedy. That night, the doll's activity escalated. The house filled with loud banging. Lights flickered, and the whispers turned into shrill laughter. I found the doll sitting in the middle of the living room, its glassy eyes staring at me. "You need to leave," I whispered, my voice trembling. The doll's head slowly turned, and in a childlike voice it said, "You can't get rid of me." Desperate, my mom and I decided to destroy the doll. We took it to the backyard and set it on fire, but the flames wouldn't touch it. We tried smashing it with a hammer, but the hammer cracked instead. The doll remained intact, its lifelike eyes glinting in the firelight. Eventually, we decided to bury the doll far away from our house, but even now, I still hear faint humming in the middle of the night, and sometimes I find small red handprints on my mirrors. I don't know if the doll is truly gone or if it's just waiting to come back. If you ever find yourself tempted by an antique doll, think twice before bringing it home. Some things aren't meant to be loved, and some toys play games you can never win. Arya Mitchell had spent the last 5 years moving from city to city due to her husband, Michael's government job, but this time was different. Michael had been promoted, and they had been given a massive, beautiful villa in a quiet neighborhood outside Boston. For the first time, Arya felt like they could finally settle down, but from the moment they moved in, something felt wrong. On her first day alone, Arya visited her new neighbor, Mrs. Dawson. Mrs. Dawson's smile faltered when she heard their new address. "You're in Villa 17? Arya frowned. "Yes. Why?" The old woman hesitated. "That house has history." "What do you mean?" Mrs. Dawson sighed. "Years ago, a woman named Eleanor lived there. People say she practiced things she shouldn't have." Arya's stomach tightened. And one night, her husband returned home and found her hanging from the rafters. A chill crawled up Arya's spine. "But the strangest thing," Mrs. Dawson whispered, "people don't see her spirit. They see a child." That night, Arya couldn't shake Mrs. Dawson's words. Michael was working late, so she distracted herself by cooking dinner. As she stirred the pot, the smell of something sweet filled the air. Then, a soft whimper. Arya froze. It was the sound of a child crying. She turned toward the hallway. A shadow moved. She rushed outside. For a moment, she swore she saw a small boy standing in the garden. Pale skin, dark, hollow eyes. And then, he was gone. The next few nights were worse. Footsteps echoed through the halls. Doors creaked open by themselves. The child's laughter followed her wherever she went. Michael dismissed it. "It's just stress, Arya. We finally have a home. Don't let old ghost stories ruin it." But Arya knew what she saw, and soon, she wouldn't be the only one. A few weeks later, Arya woke up feeling sick. Michael rushed her to the hospital, where they received shocking news. She was pregnant. After years of trying, they were finally having a baby. Michael was overjoyed, but Arya, she was terrified, because that night as she lay in bed, she heard a whisper in her ear, "He doesn't belong to you." Months passed, and Arya's pregnancy progressed. But the hauntings got worse. One evening, she walked past the bathroom mirror and froze. In the reflection, the boy stood behind her, his head tilted unnaturally, his eyes filled with tears. And then, he spoke. "Don't leave me, Mama." Arya screamed. Michael rushed in, but the boy was gone. That night, Michael finally believed her. One evening, Arya was hanging laundry on the rooftop terrace. The wind was strong, making the sheets billow like ghosts. And then, she heard it, the child's voice. "Mama, don't leave me." She turned and saw him standing at the edge of the rooftop, his eyes burning red. Arya stumbled back in terror. Her foot slipped, and she fell. When she woke up, she was in the hospital. Michael was beside her, tears in his eyes. "Arya," he whispered. She already knew. Her baby was gone, and worse, the doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "We're sorry, but you won't be able to conceive again." Arya felt like she was drowning. Everything was gone. After Arya returned home, the haunting stopped. No footsteps, no laughter, no whispers. One evening, as she sat in the garden, she saw him again. The boy stood behind a tree watching her. His eyes were sad. This time, she didn't run. Softly, she asked, "Who are you?" The boy hesitated. Then he placed a small, ghostly hand on her forehead. And suddenly, she knew he wasn't Eleanor's child. He was hers, the spirit of the baby she lost, the one who would never be born. Tears filled Arya's eyes, and for the first time, the boy smiled. Then, he faded into the wind, never to be seen again.